Hello and welcome to the Generational Gamer, J Prime here. Today we are going to talk about Zelda, particularly the console releases. Now Zelda's been out since the 1980s, so we've got 30 years of Zelda history. But we're not going to talk about all of them. We're going to focus on the main console releases. I've been absent from Zelda since The Wind Waker. After I finished that game, I had not played another Zelda. But there's a rumor of Skyward Sword being re-released. That game looks beautiful. I've only played it a handful of times. But, let's talk about that. Welcome to the Generational Gamer. What's going on, everyone? Like I said in my intro, I have not played Zelda in years. I mean, The Wind Waker came out originally on the GameCube. I never played it on any of the successive systems. So, recently, I picked up a Wii U. I know, everybody's shocked. Hell, I'm shocked too, because I always thought the system was absolutely ridiculous. But, you know what? My kids really like it. There's a few games on it that aren't going to be released on the Switch, so I picked it up on Black Friday for a pretty good price. Regen, no less. Got it from Regen. Watch my video on Regen. Those guys are really nice. And with that, I started looking at Zelda games. I hadn't played in years. I saw that there's some remakes. Twilight Princess, which I never played on the Wii. I never really cared about it because, like I said, I was out of Zelda games at the time. Actually uses the GameCube as the baseline, and then, of course, it's retrofitted with the HD components. The Wii U interests me at first because of essentially it's a high-definition Wii. Now, you lose the GameCube support, but I bring out my GameCube and solve that problem. All that brought about a renewed interest in Zelda. One of the first games I picked up for it was the Twilight Princess HD. Ironically, at GameStop, and it wasn't in terrible condition, and it actually plays, so kudos to them. Then I was reading, and I saw, and I was suckered into this, was Skyward Sword. I thought that if you downloaded it, it was actually an HD version. It's not. It's just the Wii version on the Nintendo site. So, that kind of sucks. The game I really do like. I mean, I haven't gotten that far in it. I'm literally just at the part, once I get down to Earth, I was just finished the bird part, which gets me into the motion controls, which freaking suck. I get what they're trying to do with the Motion Plus. Thundercats, ho! But, that's just not for me. Even this is kind of annoying. I want something like this where it's just a traditional controller. Which is why I really do appreciate their current offering in the Switch. I really do like this thing, and, I mean, even if you don't want to use the Joy-Cons, you can always use a real controller. But, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the 3 Zelda games that came out after The Wind Waker. So, you've got Twilight Princess. I've got that on HD now on the Wii U. I've got Skyward Sword, which I already said I don't particularly like the way that Nintendo did it because there's nothing upscaled on it. It's literally just the game. The 4GB DVD streamlined into essentially, it's not a ROM image because but it's definitely a DVD image. And at that point, it's just the same old game I could have just bought used a hell of a lot cheaper and played it on the Wii. So the only advantage is I hear that the Skyward Sword bug that cripples the game is actually resolved. And then, of course, just Breath of the Wild, which I have just started playing on the Switch. So the game I spent the most time with so far is Skyward Sword. And as I was saying, the motion controls, they absolutely suck. You have to be so precise in your actions in order for it to work the way it's supposed to. I mean, just getting your bird to fly. I want to use an analog stick, or even a D-pad. I mean, hell. But this nonsense... Alright, let's tilt your bird. Alright. I hate that. I hate motion controls. I get it was a gimmick back then, but they are absolutely terrible. Let's pull my sword out. Okay. My wife comes down and goes, well, honey, what are you doing? I'm trying to get my sword out. Yeah, I've heard that one before. I'm not a big fan of it. I would love to see the game remastered on the Switch. I've been told that the Wii Wind Waker HD has some of the tedious elements stripped out of it, which was really what killed it for me, because growing up playing Zelda and Zelda 2, truthfully, I started with Zelda 2, that was my first one, and then I backtracked and played the original Zelda. Those games were complicated, but simplistic. The new one, Breath of the Wild, you have to cook. I mean, how complicated can this possibly be? Plus, your weapons constantly break unless you get the good ones. Which, of course, you can't get at the beginning of the game, which is when you really need all the helping hands. So, I like the Zelda game. I like Skyward Sword. I mean, hell, you get the Master Sword right away, except they call it something different. But it's also the very first game in the Zelda timeline. Breath of the Wild is the very last one. And I feel compelled to play Zelda Breath of the Wild as much as possible because, spoiler alert, the princess has been waiting 100 years for me to save her, and I'll be damned if I keep her waiting any longer. Anyway, spoiler over. That's about as far into the game as I've gotten anyway. Getting back to motion controls for just a second, and I know I bounce all around, that's just the way my mind operates. They suck. Can anybody out there tell me at a time when the motion controls actually did something useful? I have one instance. The very first game I ever bought on my PS3 was Resistance. And when Sony was trying to convince the population that force feedback was old technology and they instituted the 6-axis, which, I mean, it was cool. I played Flow on there. That was the game that actually used it the best. But the best feature about it was when one of the mutants from Resistance, which I can't... Chimera. When one of the Chimera grabbed you, you could push them off of you. That was a pretty cool usage of the motion controller. I can't think of another instance of when this thing actually was something I'd want to use. So, the Switch has them. The Switch as a whole has it, which is actually a very tedious section in Breath of the Wild. There's one temple where you gotta roll a ball in one of those puzzles, and I was about ready to throw the game until I realized you could just flip it upside down and do it that way, or use the Pro Controller. And then, of course, each one of these Joy-Cons has its own motion controller in it. I contend, Nintendo, if you are listening, please set up a global preference in the Switch where you can disable motion controls as a whole and then enable them as necessary. I mean, even Mario Odyssey has required motion control components. Because if you want to throw your hat straight up, you gotta go like this. And I freaking hate that. I disabled motion controls in that. Why in the hell does this screen come up every single time? It's 30 seconds out of my life I gotta wait. I do not like having that. I already said I don't want motion controls. Leave me the hell alone. I disabled them in Mario Kart. I disabled them in Zelda. I disabled them in pretty much every game I get them. That's the first thing I do, and then save it. I say that. Zelda has mandatory motion controls, like I just said, with that stupid little game. So, I deal with that. But motion control should absolutely be optional. Now, if they bring Skyward Sword to the Switch, which would be absolutely phenomenal, but Skyward Sword has no cube or non-motion control variant. What do? You have to rework the entire game. Zelda Skyward Sword would be absolutely awesome if you could just use your D-pad, your control stick, and be able to control your character just fine. The game is absolutely beautiful. I love how it's a modern take. It almost looks like a modern take on the original Legend of Zelda. Hell, I'd like to see a remake of the original Legend of Zelda. And news broke yesterday, at least it was a rumor, that Nintendo is looking at producing a Zelda a year, which means I'm guessing it's going to be a lot of remakes or reuse of a lot of the same engines. Now, I like Breath of the Wild. I like Skyward Sword. I haven't really played Twilight Princess that much yet, but what are they really going to do? I mean, these games are long. It's not like you could just sit through them in a weekend and get through them. As a grown man, I don't have the same kind of time I did as when I was a child, so I could just get through a game fairly quickly. I mean, these are 20, 30, 40-hour games. So, that'll be a job each year. Or just simply collect them, and then when Nintendo decides to stop doing that, then go through them. Which is pretty much what I'm doing now. So what do you think about motion controls? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Do you think they're okay? Do you think they're as much of a gimmick as I do? Because that's pretty much all I think of them. And the fact that they annoy me. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Peace out, everyone.